Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to another exciting edition of your number one talk show, City Talks, with Reuben Abati on your number one lifestyle station, City 1051 FM. On this show, we discuss stories of political and human interest that affect us as Nigerians and as members of a global human community. Today, we'll be discussing the topic, Cybersecurity Levy, Matters Arising. And it's a great pleasure to introduce our guest for today's program. He is the founder and managing director, Cowrie Asset Management Limited. His name is Mr. Johnson Chukwu, where he prefers to call himself Mr. Johnson Chukwu, simply Mr. But he's actually High Chief Johnson Chukwu, double chief, triple chief Johnson Chukwu. But let's stay for the purpose of this program on the professional line. Johnson Chukwu is the initiator, founder of Cowrie Asset Management Limited, chairman, Fidelity Pension Managers Limited, chairman, Virgin Forest Energy Limited, member of Taxation of Nigeria, FCTI, an associate of the Chartered Institute of Stockbrokers, honorary senior member, Chartered Institute of Bankers of Nigeria. He is also a member of the Institute of Directors. He has attended several courses, including Harvard Business School, Boston, USA, Stanford Graduate School of Business, California, USA, IESE Business School in Barcelona, Spain, Wharton Business School, University of Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, in the United States, and the London School of Economics, United Kingdom. He worked as a facilitator with Terrapin, a world leader in business events with offices in London, New York, Singapore, Sydney, Dubai, and Johannesburg, and the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria, ICANN. He's a regular speaker at AFSIC Investing in Africa conferences and a media commentator regularly on the economy, capital market, and banking industry. Now to our topic before us. The House of Representatives, the Northern Elders Forum, members of the organized private sector on Thursday, and that includes the National Economic Summit Group, asked the Central Bank of Nigeria to suspend the implementation of the controversial cybersecurity levy, saying the new charge will worsen the economic hardship in the country, among other issues. Specifically, they called for a complete reversal of the policy, which they described as insensitive. The cybersecurity levy, meant to be imposed on online banking transactions, had earlier been rejected by many Nigerians. On May 6, the CBN communicated a new policy requiring financial institutions to introduce the cybersecurity levy. The CBN said the levy is pegged at 0.5% of all electronic transaction values, and that is a provision of the recently passed Cybercrime Prevention Amendment Act of 2024, specifically Section 44 sub 2 of that particular act. The purpose is to bolster the nation's cybersecurity initiatives, which are overseen by the Office of the National Security Advisor. And this has been very controversial. And we have Chief Johnson Chukwu here to take us through some of the details and to address some of the controversies emerging as a result of the circular by the CBN. If you want to be part of this conversation, you can call us on 0700 1051 1051. And you can also leave a comment on our WhatsApp number 090 991 64403, and on our social media accounts at City1051 on Zoom, Instagram, and Facebook. Now, thank you very much for joining us, Chief Johnson Chukwu. Great delight to have you on the program.
Your Excellencies, for having me. Good day.
Well, very quickly, this subject of cyber security levy has been a big issue. Most of the issues that have been raised by all the persons and groups that have intervened in the matter, including SERAP, which has threatened to take the federal government of Nigeria to court, and all the other persons who have commented on this. One, there is too much taxation. In fact, Mr. Peter Obi, presidential candidate of the Labour Party, says that, look, what the federal government needs to do is to pay attention to fundamentals instead of further punishing the Nigerian people who are already overtaxed. Questions have been raised about the interpretation of the relevant sections 42 and 44 that the CBN is relying upon in the Cybercrime Act 2024. And Falano SAN says that has been misinterpreted. That the law, particularly in the second schedule also to the law, and this is also the position of the House of Reps, does not say that you have to pay the levy at the point of electronic transfer origination. That the law is very specific as to who and who should pay the levy. GSM providers, internet service providers, banks and other financial institutions, and also, insurance companies. But to say, and the Nigerian Stock Exchange, but to say that every Nigerian must come and pay this levy, Falano SCN has advised that another look has to be taken at the interpretation, and that the National Assembly will have to reverse itself. However, the same National Assembly, through Senator Buba, has said that it has done the right thing. But what Nigerians are saying is that, look, these taxes are too many. And that in any case, at what point did the Office of the National Security Advisor become a revenue collection agency? Since we're told that the Office of the NSA is going to manage the funds and be entitled to 40% of what is put at over 4 trillion naira that may accrue from this additional taxation. Well, I've just tried to provide the background to the story. But you are the expert in this area. What do you think?
Well, for me, I tend to be, of course, I'm a Nigerian, so I would naturally align with Nigerians because we all feel the pinch, the burden of this additional tax. But most importantly, what we have to recognize is that taxes are levied either on consumption or on profit. To now levy taxes on transactions volume will actually negate the objective of fair taxation. And this is what I mean. If I make a transfer from my account to you, Dr. Abati, it does not necessarily mean that I am paying you my share of my profit. So if you have to deduct a 0.5%, 0.5% on that payment, it then deducts from my operating capital. And maybe you have to make payment to some other person, maybe to Seni, Rufai, and then Rufai has to make payment to another person. So by the time you take this payment in 5 places, you are now deducted effectively about 2.5% from the total transaction value going on. So what this will happen is that it will discourage people is carrying out transactions, business transactions. It will slow down the velocity of circulation of money in the economy. And that will further constrain economic activities. We are dealing with an economy that is growing at a very anemic rate, at a very fragile rate. Last year, the economy grew about 2.74%. So if you impose this tax, what you're going to do is that you're going to make it difficult for genuine business people who have low margin from their business transactions to continue to pay through the banking system. And that will also discourage people using the banking system. So it will negate the objective for what they call financial inclusion. People are going to go back to want to do their transactions by cash. Because if you do your transaction by cash, you're not going to be subject to this tax. So you really can't justify this tax. Because one, it is not based on profit. Neither is it based on consumption. Of course, value-added tax is based on consumption. So if I say, look, I drink a lot of beer, and you impose a 7.5% tax on beer, and I say, look, I don't want to pay that tax, I will avoid drinking beer. But I cannot avoid making payment using the banking system. So if you have to impose this tax when there's a third-party payment, then ultimately you're imposing tax on me for using the financial system. And therefore, you are telling me no longer use the financial system. And there are multiple implications of that, including at the macro management system, at the macro level. When you talk of the effectiveness of monetary policies, you need to have larger pool of economic activity going to the financial system to have more effective monetary policy implementation. So you're going to be taking a tax that will, in the medium to long term, create a lot of negative implications that will overweigh whatever value you think you want to create.
Well, but one of the justifications that we have had is that in the attachment to the circular by the CBN, that there are 16 exemptions. For example, payment of salaries will not be affected, payment of loans may not be affected, some other categories of payment, 16 of them, will not be affected, we're told. Now, who ensures this? How does the banks, how do they make a distinction between payment that is salary, or payment that is for healthcare, or payment that is for education? So because these are some of the exemptions that we've been told. And then what do you think of the statement by Femi Falana SAN that, look, they misinterpreted the law? In the Cybercrime Act, Prevention and Prohibition Act of 2015, the phrase used was businesses. In this new act, the phrase used is business. There's also this controversy about whether it should be 0.5% or it should be 0.005%. The assumption is that, in making that law, the Senate, the National Assembly got the figures wrong, got some of the phrases wrong. Do you share the view that there is an urgent need to take a second look at this cyber crime levy, idea, and that for now, the CBN should withdraw its circular pending, further look at the law, and in response to public objections. Those public objections have been very robust.
Okay, let's even start from the maker of the author of the law. The author of the law is the National Assembly. The House of Representatives has come out to say, look, there is a misapplication of the law, misinterpretation of the law. And that the House of Rep has requested that the central bank suspend the collection of these taxes or the implementation of these taxes. So if the author says, look, what I authored may have some lacuna, or says that you are misinterpreting or misapplying it, and I'm asking you to hold action. So that actually is at the base of the support that we should implement this immediately. But beyond that, there is a fundamental issue on the rates. The 2015 Act was specific on 0.005%. The amendment in 2024 had some section where it said 0.005% and subsection 0.5%. Because I have taken time to look at both. And clearly, if you have such conflicts, so you have to look at the fundamental law. The fundamental law is the 2015 law. The amendment, clearly, it was amending that 2015 law. And if there are discrepancies in the rate, which is a fundamental component of that law, then we have to go back to the fundamental law. So I think if we even have to fall back to the original law, which is the 2015 Act, then it said 0.005%. Then the other aspect is the issue of exemptions. One of the tenets of taxation is that it must be certain. So the person who is paying the tax must know what he's paying tax on and what the tax rate is. We have discussed the issue of tax rate. If you talk of issues like payment of loans, Nigeria's economy is still a largely informal economy. People lend to each other, families lend to each other, friends lend to each other. Businesses find it difficult to go to the commercial bank, the conventional banks, the deposit money banks to borrow. So there are a lot of lending entities in the economy that are largely informal. So when a loan is granted to you from any of the informal service providers or loan providers, and you have to pay it back, there is no code that you will use in making your transfer that will reflect it's a loan repayment. Which means when you make that transfer, it will be subject to tax. There are also institutions that provide credit support to their customers, to their distributors. Take for instance, Dangote Cement can provide credit accommodation to its customers. So it then means that it allows customers to take goods on credit and then pay subsequently. So when they want to make that payment, subsequent payment, are you going to charge them this tax? Or how will you recognize that they actually do enjoy spontaneous credit and that their lender was the primary dealer or primary distributor or the original equipment manufacturer, as the case may be? So it's going to be difficult to separate those things or to isolate them and make sure they are not taxed. Then you talk of medical services. Like I said, because the Nigerian economy is largely informal, are you going to say that every payment made to a pharmaceutical company is for medical services or for drugs? What of companies that are providing pharmaceutical services that are not registered as with the name pharmaceutical? Maybe they have their POS or their main account in the parent company name. And maybe the one providing the pharmaceutical services is the subsidiary company. How are you going to differentiate between those payments? So I think there are a lot of lacuna that need to go back. We need to go back and strengthen. But most importantly, do we even need this tax? Do we need to levy taxes on transactions flow? Why don't we limit taxation on consumption and on profit? So when you levy tax on profit, it basically means you are distributing, the government is sharing part of the value addition or value created by the business. So when you impose tax on the capital of a business, what you're doing is you're taxing the business to death. But when you impose tax on the net revenue of a business after you have paid for services and paid for its cost of operations, you are basically appropriating part of the value generated by that business. And that becomes understandable. So the reality is that no country should impose tax on transactions flow. And when you do that, you are taxing the capital of businesses. And you are deducting their operating capital and making it difficult for them to continue to do business at the same volume that they were doing business. So I think that should be the core of the issue.
Okay, Chief Shuku, earlier on, you made a point about the threat to financial inclusion. And I see a contradiction here. And I don't know, you are the subject area expert, whether you can explain what this contradiction is all about. Now, this same Nigerian government had been telling Nigerians that, Nigeria is underbanked, and besides that, we have to promote digital transactions, financial inclusion, spread the net, broaden the net, that's the word. And now the same Nigerian government is introducing a measure that you say will be a threat to financial inclusion because people will not go to the banks. That's one. The second thing was the point made by Taiwo Yedele during the week. He has tried to, modify that, but he was quoted as saying more or less that we need to increase VAT. We have this cyber security levy. We have this proposal to increase VAT, even if that is within the context of what the Taiwo Yedele Committee calls rebalancing the tax regime. You have telcos saying that they are going to increase tariff rates. You have providers of cable television saying that the tariffs will also go up. How do we reconcile all of this for a government that promised the people that it will reform the economy in such a way that it will be to the benefit of the people? Isn't there an ideological, economic ideology crisis, conflict in all of this?
Dr. Abati, the first thing I would say is that the government, and I said it before, and I believe a couple of Nigerians have said it, the government needs to be more deliberative in their policy pronouncements. We have seen to be a pattern where the government does not seem to think through all the ramifications of their policies before they are pronounced. We've seen that in some of the policies of the government that have some of us supported. We still support the fundamental principle of those policies, but their implementation mode or method runs short of our expectation or best practice. And then we've seen those policies reversed without the government accepting that it has reversed. So it's applicable to what we're discussing now. Now we have a government that has said ab initio that they're going to harmonize taxes and reduce the number of taxes that Nigerians are subject to make tax compliance easy. That announcement has been made at different levels of the current government. The chairman of Federal Land Revenue Service only announced recently that they will reduce the number of taxes to single digits or so. I think he mentioned even the number of the maximum number of taxes we're going to have in the country. But then we are seeing the government on the other side introducing additional new taxes. So let's even assume, without conceding that there is a need to tax Nigerians further, why don't we integrate this tax into value-added tax? The beauty of value-added tax, you can use it to discourage the consumption that you think is not appropriate, it's not healthy. So that way, the government can shape behavior. But to now introduce a tax on transactions, business transactions, beggars logic. At the time, the same government said we're going to harmonize taxes, we're going to reduce the number of taxes, and we're going to make tax compliance easier. So we're going to have a situation where you have maybe 3, 4, 5 taxes that you're only subject to. So I think the government did not think through or recognize or remember that it had made pronouncements that this current implementation will negate, which I say that the government needs to be more deliberative in its approach to policy pronouncements. The cavalier attitude of just waking up and making announcements without thinking through all the implications. Talking of the implications, which you have asked me about, you really can't be encouraging financial inclusion when you're imposing taxes on business transactions. One of the things about taxes that you use taxes, we say in economics that tax is a leakage and then subsidy is an injection. If you want to support economic growth, you reduce taxes so that people will have more money to spend. Businesses will enjoy increase in patronage. If you want to discourage behavior, discourage activities, you can impose tax on them. Remember that one of the things, the tenets of taxation is that one of the principles of taxation is that you impose taxes to discourage consumption. And in reality, if an economy is overheated, you are seeing you have high inflation rate, you have that, the economy is growing at a too fast a rate that you could unravel. You increase taxes to slow down economic growth. Countries have used the fiscal tool of taxes to encourage investment into the economy. A living example is United Arab Emirates, Dubai. Dr. Abati, if you remember, if you cast your mind back to 20 years or thereabouts, when United Arab Emirates began to attract investment in real estate, in several sectors of the economy, in retail, in retail trade, what did they do? They eliminated all taxes. There was no value-added tax in United Arab Emirates. There was no capital gains tax in United Arab Emirates. You can buy a property and flip it and not pay any tax. And that way, the whole world began to flood into United Arab Emirates. Capital flew into that country. Labor flew into that country. They were not subject to personal income tax. And look at what they have achieved. They've grown an economy. So what governments do is that you reduce taxes to bake a big cake So that when the economy is big, when you impose even a minimal tax rate, you generate far more revenue than taxing a system to death. And countries, we have proof of concept of this. India and several other countries have adopted it. Low tax environment to stimulate investment and economic growth. And then when the economy has grown and you have a large GDP, you begin to introduce that taxes and you generate more revenue than you would have done if you tax a small base.
Okay, Chief Chuku, I have heard you. But let's deal with this other issue about the management of the funds as proposed, which is that is the office of the NSA that will manage about 40%. Now, what the law says, Section 162 of the 1999 Constitution, sub 1 thereof, is that all federally collected revenue will go to the Federation account. We had this issue before when the federal government went to court with 36 states of the Federation over how revenue, should be shared. In this particular case, oil revenue, and all of that. Now, but in this case now, you now have an agency of the federal government going to be given 40%. Do you think that this is an additional reason, simply described by others, that, look, the NSA's office cannot be a revenue collecting agency? Why the Senate, the National Assembly, should take a second look at this law? And will you agree with the view that the CBN should withdraw its circular for now until the law is properly defined?
I'd actually say that the author of the law, which is the National Assembly, had actually said that one arm of the National Assembly, the House of Representatives, were saying, look, the law should be suspended. They will take a second look at it and amend the contradictions. But the fundamental issue, what you have just brought up now, the Constitution says that any law that is a fundamental law of the country, and that any law that is contrary to the Constitution is not effective to the extent that it contradicts the Constitution, or that segment of the law that is in conflict with the Constitution is null and void. So, if we look at that perspective, from that perspective, then clearly the provision that the National Security Advisor will now manage 40% of a federally collected revenue, which we are all even objecting to. We are not conceding to the fact that the tax should even apply. But let's even discuss that without necessarily considering that the tax will apply. Then that negates the fundamental law of the country. Look at value-added tax. Value-added tax is transferred to the Federation account and shared on based on the revenue sharing formula defined by the Revenue Mobilization and Fiscal Commission. So even if this becomes implemented, then it should go, because the issue of cybersecurity protection is not limited to the federal government. And bear in mind that this is not the tax they want to impose on us does not confer on us the benefit of insurance. So does this mean that if anything, my account, my current account, my personal account in the bank is breached and I lose money, am I going to go to the National Security Advisor and say, look, I have been paying this tax, you now need to refund me? And that takes to the issue of taxation. Taxes should not be imposed for every hue and hue of the government. We're already paying, companies are already paying education tax. There is a deduction for the Nigerian police. So you really can't continue to impose specific tax on each activity of the government. The government is there to provide basic services, including security. And security, we're not talking about, it's no longer just physical security, also cyber security. So you can't get Nigerians to pay for every activity of the government separately. Then what is government doing? So I think, in the first place, you can't have a law that is contrary to the fundamental of the country. That segment of that law becomes null and void and of no effect. But beyond that, the issue is that the government cannot afford to tax you and I. So one day they're going to tax us for supporting to whatever they think of that the service government is providing. And in effect, government is pulling back from its primary duty of providing us what we call public goods, which security is part of it. So if I have to finance specifically for government to provide public goods, then there's a problem.
Well, Chief Shuku, I get all the points you have raised. One other question I will have loved to ask you is about the Article 4 consultation report of the IMF, which came out just this week. And the IMF mission chief, country representative in that report, all commending the Tinubu administration for its economic reforms program. And some Nigerians have said, well, what do you expect the IMF to say? Since we've been running Nigeria on the basis of IMF prescriptions to the disadvantage of the people. Although the IMF Article 4 consultation report also said something about social protection, about cash transfer, and about the need for the Nigerian government to scale up these cash transfers and social protection, the exact nature of which the report does not exactly state. Social protection, is it social protection for ordinary people or social protection for SUV riding senators and government officials are just feeding fat at the expense of the people? But, before you respond to that, let's take this quick break and then we'll throw our lines open and take interventions from persons who have joined us on social media and who are also listening to us at home. We'll be right back after this short break.
Most of the contracts in NDDC are given out to members of National Assembly, but you don't know about it. It's okay.
When you need unbiased information, balanced analysis, reviews, and insight on the policies and programs that concern you, listen to City Talks with Reuben Abati. Be a part of it. Call 0700 1051 1051 to lend your voice on topics and help shape our country for the better.
My name is Reuben Abati. I will be your host on City Talks from noon to 1 p.m. every Saturday. Join me as we dissect major issues of public interest. You will be glad you did.
City Talks with Reuben Abati on your number one lifestyle station, City 1051. From noon to 1 p.m. every Saturday.
Welcome back from that commercial break. And for those of you who are just tuning in, welcome to City Talks with Reuben Abati on your number one lifestyle station, City 1051 FM. Now, the topic we've been discussing today is cybersecurity levy. Matters arising. And I have with me the founder and managing director of Cowrie Asset Management Limited. His name is Johnson Chukwu. Remember, if you want to be part of this conversation, you can call us on 0700-1051-1051. You can also reach us on 020-1344-6555 and on WhatsApp 090-991-64403 and on our social media accounts at City 1051 on Zoom, Instagram, and Facebook. Well, Chief Shuku, thank you very much for staying with us. Now our lines are open. I think we have a caller on the line. Hello, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. Hello? Okay, we lost that call. But Chief Shuku, the person is calling back. Maybe, yes, go ahead. Okay, we seem to, wow. The dashboard keeps blinking. Hello?
Hello, good afternoon, Dr. Reuben Abati. How are you, sir?
Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. Is that Dr. Moses?
That's it. Calling you from this afternoon, and I greet our chief. You see, first of all, let me talk from the angle of the financial inclusion Chief spoke about. By the time you draw people away from doing the banking, that means they will have to go to cash. I want to ask, where is the cash? do you know that today, if you go to the ATM, you don't get cash there? And that means you have to go to the POS people. And when you even go to the POS people, sometimes you still have to transfer money to them, meaning that they are going to be paying that money ordinarily you wanted to run away from. So I think the policy is not well thought out. And the major problem is that the government is totally, disjointed. There's no connectivity. The financial, at the head of the fiscal revenue, the revenue agency, and even the CBN, the finance minister, they are not properly coordinated. For instance, now, if just like he said, the head of the revenue board says they want to reduce the tax burden on the people by coming to one BG, how come the CBN is bringing the circular again? Macy, and that will tell you that just like what many people are saying, that the expressionist ideology of Tinubu is what is playing out here. The agberonism, just get anything from anywhere, irrespective of who is dying or not. And the government just wants to be, subsidizing the opulent lifestyle with the blood of Nigerian people. Look at what poverty is today. You have a raging poverty, people are going down, businesses are losing, yet you have a government that is not even thinking about how to make the people survive and live. So now, if you are going to be talking about the NSC being the warehouse of the money, I agree with what you said earlier about the federation account and all the states sharing the money. Now, do you know that they will still tell you the NSC is going to spend its 40%, supposed 40%, and nobody is going to account for that money. They will tell you it's national security interest, so there's no need to tell you how they are spending the money. The same way they are spending the security vote today. Now let's not go to the bank. If the banks who are making billions and billions of money every year are going to be the ones gaining their money, and you want to ask again, if the banks are making this profit and we have manufacturing companies losing, just like the Nigeria Bureau is going to lose about 52 billion this year, they have seen MTN told you they've lost 50 billion due to foreign exchange, whatever. Many companies have their only banks in Nigeria are making profit even though they are still not holding their staff. Why can't the banks pay the money? Why do you have the cyber agency, whatever, in Nigeria, the SARS common of these people, about 4 or 5 agencies? Why are they not in charge of checking the security of Nigerian cyberspace? Why
hello?
The government is doing this?
Hello?
Hello,
well, I already pointed out earlier on that, the second schedule to that act and section 42 of the same act identifies the people, that would pay that levy. And this is the point of Femi Falana SAN. This is also the point that has been made by the House of Reps committee, that it looks like that law is being misapplied. But I asked you earlier on, is that Dr. Moses?
No, you have to take up on the line, not your Dr. Moses.
Okay, you sounded like him. But thank you all the same for joining us. I'm sure, Finally, sir. Now, on the issue of the VAT, I disagree with our chief that the money should be taken to VAT. No. For instance, in 2019, when Tinubu had his colloquium in Abuja after Buhari won the election, that time Buhari wanted to raise the VAT from 7.5 to 15% as he proposed, just to be at par with other ECOWAS countries. Now, Tinubu came out. He said, no, people are suffering now. The economy is bad. If you increase the VAT, you are going to put the people into more poverty. What do we have to do under this regime? What is philosophy? What is integrity? Should we not ask our people, our leaders, so that we just know who is going to lead us? I think Nigerians are the same victims of the same choices they have made. And we cannot continue this. So look at the emerging poverty we have in this country. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much for joining us. I see Dr. Boniface Chizia's hand up there via Zoom. If we could just have Dr. Chizia's intervention. Dr. Chizia, thank you for joining us.
Reuben, thank you very much. Johnson, well done. I have to...
Thank you, Doctor.
Yeah, well done. I have some concerns about this document. I don't think that, the policy should be about the human person. But you don't seem to get that impression. So the president wants to the scene, the image of somebody who is tough, will take tough decisions and so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, governance, about the welfare of the people. But you don't seem to get that much as you watch this government. Besides the way and manner they go about implementing their decisions, the lackluster, the fact that they come across as not being well, not done a thorough job, and have reversals and so on and so forth. You don't get that impression. So, but this is happening. We are in an economy where inflation is unusually high, about the highest in 20 years. I think the last time it was at 3.2%. I've not tracked it. Inflation is very high, and so that means people are hurting. And then with that sudden, they begin to introduce new taxes of questionable nature. Well, yes, Nigeria, has a low tax to GDP ratio. Yes, we know that, and there's a need for us to increase that, the tax collection. But the way to go is supporting the tax net. There are many people in Nigeria that should be paying tax that are not paying. There are lots of people, market women, and so on and so forth. We need to devise an ingenious way. We leave it for some of these grants, we go about collecting tolls and so on from people. We leave them to collecting these monies, and these monies never get to the treasury. So I think there's a need for us to be circumspect. There's a need for us to be careful with our policies. We take foreign exchange. Let's not go back to the problems we have now. What caused it? But the way thing is going about, so people are going to pay duties, and then the rates are changing. They are rushing in, and telling the people at the ports to increase the rates and so on. And we are talking about inflation. We are talking about managing the economy. We are talking about the welfare of the people. So, I think that we need to, I don't know who will talk to them, but people need to, maybe those that have the ideas should talk to this government that they need to pull back and concentrate. In most places overseas, what will decide whether they're going to be re-elected? They ask you, what has your life been? Quality of your life? Between when this government came in and when they are going out. Obviously, for this government, if it's where the election processes have integrity, of course, the answer is obvious. So it's alarming. I don't want to go into all the issues. In fact, I want to collect such taxes. Where are you going to draw the line? Those are the issues.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chizia. So we take another caller who has been trying to. Yes. Hello.
Hello.
Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us.
Dr. Reuben Abati himself, the erudite one. Now this is Dr. Moses himself.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, my student told me that. The doctor cleared you. Thank you very much. For real, it's always going to be psychological for me now. I wouldn't want to go into jargons of all econs and what I feel is technical terms. Discretion remains the better part of valor. I hope Tinubu knows that things are as tough as it can be. I don't want to sound superlative all the time. Oh, people are poor. Look, if the point sitting up or whatever he said earlier is always going to bring out to the federal government. It's unfortunate. We have other tiers of government that are not really doing what they should do. If other tiers of government do what they should do, we should not always be this obsessed about the federal government. But because they are the center and they control certain parts of our lives, I think right now they should consider again the review of this cyber security levy. People are hurting. As I said, I don't want to go into jargons of economics or maybe it has to do with the issue of taxation and what have you. But let's be talking that people are not asking to say that people are sad. People are not happy in Nigeria. People are depressed. It's even understating it. They can as well go about some of these things later. Yes, you told us, even in your colloquium, when you were 68 or so, that you're going to watch.
Hello, Dr. Moses? Okay, looks like we lost the connection with him there, but I guess we got the point that he was trying to make. It's a very wet day in this part of the studio in Lagos, but okay, looks like he's back. Dr. Moses, is that you?
No, it's not Dr. Moses.
Oh, it's another caller on the line. Okay, please. Thank you for joining us.
I don't know, just about the good morning, good afternoon to your guest. Jonathan is my name. One will just wonder, practically, let's assume they even collect this levy. Practically, what would they do with the money? I've been imagining, are they building any capacity Are they building a new court where they will prosecute fraudulent people that are caught? Are they, I'm just wondering. Another thing is on record that a lot of fraudulent people have been arrested before now. I want to be corrected. Has anyone been prosecuted to the point that he was jailed? So is this money that they want to collect now that will make us get results? Abba. Just like your guest said, politically look at things as a government. You are in charge of security. Now, do you want to say you want to collect levy for armed robber that come to our house again? If you finish that armed robber that come to our house, all these boys that attack us on the highway, will you collect levy for that? Abba. I don't want to, a lot of things to imagine, Dr. Reuben. Is it because we have 200 million plus, somebody can just sit and pick up a calculator and see how much you can generate in a twinkle of an eye and throw it on the air? Abba. I don't know, Dr. Abati. I don't know who will save us as Nigerians out of all this mess. Since they removed subsidy, they claim they have saved a lot of. Tinubu said he has saved a lot of money. Is that money? Is it reflecting our life? They keep on sucking money. And in their own freezers, they have fresh fish, meat, and everything. And all of us out there, we are suffering. We'll see where we go with all this. Well, enjoy your afternoon. Good job.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Johnson. Let me come back to you, Chief Johnson Chukwu. I mean, quite a number of issues have been raised. The IMF Article 4 consultation report is saying, the Tinubu administration is doing so well with reforms. But the Nigerian people who are affected by the reforms, they are saying, the first caller talked about agberoism and talked about what President Tinubu really wants to achieve with increasing VAT as proposed. After all, he once opposed it. Dr. Moses talked about how people are really suffering. What is the point of this cybersecurity levy? Dr. Chizia, raised issues about the need for coordination, for thinking through policies properly, instead of imposing additional hardship on the people. And then the last caller, Mr. Johnson, raised the point. He has a question about accountability. Even if they collect this money, what would they do with it? Do you hand over money to people will not be able to account for it? These are some of the questions. What's your response?
Okay, let's start with the IMF statement on Article 4 report that said the government is doing well when it comes to policy reforms. I had said earlier in this our conversation that the government needs to be more circumspect in its policy implementations or pronouncements. That we have instances where well-intended policies, some policies that we have advocated for, cried ourselves hawks, asking the previous government to implement, were implemented by the current government, but were implemented in very haphazard manner, and therefore imposed pains on the citizen without commensurate gains. And I'll give you a live example. The issue of subsidy removal, which is one of the things that IMF is looking at. You and I had, in the previous conversation, I had said in the previous conversation that, look, the government needs to take out the subsidy, they need to harmonize the exchange rate. But having said that, there were some conditions that should have preceded the subsidy removal. Those ones were not put in place. Today, the government is paying subsidy. So IMF looks at it from the perspective that the government had taken a key policy reform. Yes. But whether that policy reform has achieved its objective, the answer today is no, because there is subsidy on petrol and the government does not have the guts. Neither should any government have the guts to formally increase the price of fuel. So you have a situation where a policy, well-proposed policy has been implemented, and then the benefit of it has been reversed, while as the costs or the pains associated with it are still with us. So those are the issues that we're saying that the government needs to be more circumspect. So if IMF is looking at it from another perspective and say, look, these are policies that we have all asked the previous government to take. Yeah, they are right to say, look, government is taking the right policies. How those policies are implemented is the subject matter. if they were wrongly implemented and they inflicted pains, we all knew they were going to come with some pains. But we felt that once those policies are implemented, there is we go through a phase of difficulties, and then we have a normalization, and then we will see a growth. But if we have gone through those pains, and then the policy reverses, and the government is not paying that subsidy at a higher rate, then it defeats the objective of those pains. It defeats the pain the citizens have gone through, are going through. So those are the issues. So I'm looking at it from one narrow perspective. Look, those policies we are taking, yes, we are like the policies. I have canvassed repeatedly for more than 10 years or thereabout that we should take out the subsidy which commanded the exchange rate. But how they were done leaves a little to be desired. And I have used this analogy before. If a woman is pregnant and then the delivery is not normal and the doctor needs to carry out an operation, the doctor will know that the woman is having a breech pregnancy, that the least likely going to approach will be likely, if the baby doesn't reverse, the doctor has to carry out a CS. The doctor will carry out a blood, determine the woman's blood, make sure there are extra blood available. The doctor will put a specialist when it comes to children, and then the doctor will make sure that other supporting facilities are available, including oxygen in case the child has to go to an oxygen, and the mother. So when the operation is done, if the woman is losing blood, there will be blood, the blood type that will be infused. So if the doctor says, okay, I have seen this child, this woman may have to go through a CS, and all of a sudden the doctor begins to carry out an operation, and the woman is losing blood, and the woman dies for loss of blood. And at the time when the woman is losing blood, we then begin to run head basket and looking for a way to get blood. And maybe she has an O+, that is, maybe she has a blood group that is difficult to come by. And then we said we did everything, and then we couldn't find her blood type on time, and then she died. Then that operation had failed. The doctor will be held liable for carrying out operation in the wrong manner. So that's what we're dealing with. So whether the operation was necessary, it was necessary. Whether the situation of a breech pregnancy will require a CS, it's certain. But how that operation is carried is the each subject matter. So that's what we have to recognize. So that is speaking about the IMF assessment. Right policies were taken, but taken in such a manner that the benefits have not materialized, may not materialize again because the subsidy has reversed. So that's back to that. The issue that people have talked about, Dr. Boniface Chizie, his comment on the government has to be more deliberative, which is what I'm emphasizing on. The government needs to think through their policies. Every economic policy will have multiple implications. So you look at the proposed intention of that policy, you look at the possible side effects, or what we may call downside risk associated with that policy. And then if you identify the downside risk, you now take mitigating measures to minimize the impact of the downside risk, which is the issue of paying, supporting the most vulnerable in the society. One of the things we should have known, we knew that when you take out the subsidy on petrol, when you have another exchange rate, prices are going to go up. So if prices are going to go up, the most vulnerable in the society will suffer more. So what did we have the poverty register in place? Did we validate the poverty register? Did we put in place a mechanism to support the most vulnerable in the society? Which is one of the things IMF is saying, that you need to support the most vulnerable in the society. Like you said, it looks like the support that should go to the most vulnerable is going to the most established or most comfortable in the society. So we need to look at, and the government needs to, I was happy when the government said they had to stop momentarily the disbursement of the support they have for the vulnerable, because they felt it was going to the wrong hands. I don't know whether it has now properly been done, and the people who should benefit from it have benefited from it. The key thing is that the government must have a strategy team. The government must have to evolve a strategy team where they bring in the best of people. They argue pending economic issues. The best economists in the country will highlight the pros and cons of those policies, and mitigating measures are put in place to reduce the adverse effects of any of these policies, and to ensure that the policy achieves its primary objective.
Well, thank you. It looks like we have another caller on the line. Hello, your name? Please keep it brief.
Hello, sir. Good morning, sir.
Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us.
Yes, sir. Sir, things are very, very...
Hello? Hello? What happened with that caller? Hello? Are you there?
Yes, Dr. Reuben. Sorry, not her, but me. Sorry, on the issue of the subsidy and the report you're talking about concerning IMF consultation report. That report said, one of the aspects of the report said that government has reintroduced payment of subsidy on petrol. I'm sure you said that. And that's like what our guest is talking about now. Because number one, let me say it clearly. I am against removal of subsidy. The way Tinubu, Atiku, and Peter Obi agreed to it was wrong. I'm in support of taking the risk. Why are we talking of subsidy in the first place? We have the natural resources we cannot refine here. Is that supposed to be our own plus or minus as a country? I think we don't need any IMF to tell us the number of subsidies we need to go, what they are due. Apart from the fact that this betting research are not even our friends. We have Federal Commissioner of Finance, Awolowo. They advised him when the game was fighting civil war. He never accepted the advice. He ran Nigeria and the guy did not borrow 1 naira. Naira was never devalued. So I don't think this IMF is, IMF idea is what we need. We don't even need to talk about it. We have brilliant people here. We have people who are decent, people who are disciplined, people who are prudent to run our economy efficiently for the benefit of all, not for the interest of the selfish capitalists, those people who have kept all of us downward. I don't think that's the way to go. We need to start looking inward to devise homegrown solution to our problems. Thank you.
Very much, and thank you for calling back. Thank you. Well, I'm sure you heard him, Chief Chuku. But I missed the point. Maybe you need to respond to it a bit more in greater detail. The point that was raised about accountability. Because the average Nigerian is saying they want to collect this money. Even if they collect additional tax from us, what are they going to do with it?
Well, the key thing, Dr. Abati, you want me to respond to that?
Yes, please.
You know, the key thing, one of the things that Nigerians have been complaining about the government is that in terms of effectiveness of deployment of public resources, previous governments in the country, the governments of this country have had the negative record of effectively deploying economic resources to the benefit of the citizens in terms of value for money. And that's what is part of the problem we have today, that government will spend money and you really can't put your hand or fingers on what they are spending money on. The issue of imposing additional tax on the citizens would be less resisted if the citizens feel the government is living up to its own responsibilities to the citizens. Of course, it's a two-way thing. Citizens have responsibility to the government. You need to pay your tax, you need to obey the law, you need to do this and that. The government also have the duty to provide public amenities, secure the citizens, create an opportunity for people to fully learn themselves, improve the welfare and well-being of the citizens. That's what the Constitution says, the primary duty of government. So if the government is failing that, and that's why people are resisting even payment of additional taxes. Today, beyond the formal taxes we pay, we have informal taxes. Reuben, as we speak today, I've been running generator. I shouldn't be running generator. I'm buying diesel at about 1,500, 1,400 per liter. The government has increased the tariff, but I think I belong to band A. I'm supposed to be getting 20 hours of light. I don't get an average 10 hours of light in a day. So I'm paying additional tax on that. If you go to my village, I basically had to be involved in providing road infrastructure, water supply, and that's what we're dealing. Where I live in Lekki, I had to do my borehole to be able to provide water to myself. I have my guard, I have other security at my gate. Those are things that shouldn't apply because the salary I get, the net income I get, I'm using it to pay for services that the government should ordinarily provide. And that's why people are saying, is the government really deploying the economic resources effectively? If you compel us to pay additional taxes, What additional commitment are you making to us? You're talking about cybersecurity architecture. What exactly is government going to do? Are we going to build a dome that will make it impossible or for hackers to get into the system? What exactly are you going to do? Are we just going to create additional resources for government to frit away? So that the key thing is that not just the government, Nigerian government, the history of this country has not proven to be the most effective deployer of economic resources. They have not proven to extract best value for money for the benefit of the citizens.
Well, on that note, I would like to thank you very much, Chief Johnson Chukwu, for taking time out to join us on the program today. And I would also like to thank all the persons who called in and those who also reached out to us on Zoom and Facebook. Remember, the conversation does not end here. You can still reach out on my social media account at Abati1990 on Instagram and also at City1051 on all social media platforms. For those of you who tuned in late, there's no need to worry. You can visit YouTube page City1051 to watch the entire show. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button and leave comments. And don't forget also to tune in next week at 12 noon for another exciting edition of City Talks. My name is Reuben Abati. The show was produced by Charles Flames, Oluwaseun Adetitun, Ayodamola Oludara, Oluwatobiloba Samson, and Abiodun Odunton. The executive producer is Adedoja Allen. Have a great weekend and thank you for joining us. See you again next week. Bye for now.
The contracts in NDDC are given out to members of National Assembly, but you don't know about it. It's okay.
When you need unbiased information, balanced analysis, reviews, and insight on the policies and programs